You know, in my haste to begin filming, actually, I don't think I came up with an opening today. I don't have an opening. That's fine. That's fine. I wonder if I can compose an opening on the spot. Let's think about this. You're getting some real behind the scenes action right now. Um, yeah, let's see. Nope. Do you know what? No. Let's just start the show. Hello and welcome, everybody. Welcome back to the show. All over the show, as you know it, and yeah, you're just here to join me being all over the show. That's just how it goes. That's how it goes and how it be. Okay. Firstly, just a quick disclaimer: my fan is is on, dude, and it's only on because it is insanely hot today. Yo, on this holy Sunday, it's hot, dude. It's hot, hotter than hell. Maybe not hotter than hell. Who knows how hot it is? Also, if it's the first time joining or if you haven't watched last week's episode, you can go and watch it. But I did disclaim in that episode that I will not be closing my window, nor will I be closing the window that's above my bedroom door. That's why you can hear some violent kitchen cleaning in the background, is because it's hot, man. I'm not gonna I'm not gonna sit and sweat here in a closed container. Sorry, that's just not how it's gonna be, you know. I'm not one to aim towards perfection. At least not now. I don't think I wanna say I don't think I have a right to perfection. But at the same time, perfection is a bit overrated, you know. There are things you can attain, that you can aim towards perfection, you know. But in the sense that I am filming this from my home and in my bedroom, you know, it's not ideal circumstances. So yeah, we can allow the fan on and the window to be open, and I'm sure you're gonna hear maybe an Uber Eats guy, maybe not. It's that time of the month where nobody's really doing Uber Eats, but but yeah, I am committed to doing these shows again. For a whole year, I was like, oh, I really want to do this, but where am I going to find the time? You know? So I found the time. Also, related to finding the time, I got these studio lights, which is something that I mentioned last week as well. But last week, last week I was like, being blinded basically because these lights are bright, you know, even on their lowest. This is not their lowest setting, but even on their lowest setting, it's pretty intense on the eyes. So I'm wearing shades for that reason and that reason alone, not to keep me quiet, as they call it, or you know, try and be cool. I will never pretend to be cool. I think trying to be cool is probably the opposite of actually being cool, you know? You have to be cool. The only way that you notice when someone is cool, right? And I mean, like, yo, that's a cool guy or a cool girl, is if it appears completely effortless, you know? That's how you know someone's really cool. Is when they just like, yo, they're not even trying to be cool, but they're cool, you know? And I respect that. But I will never claim to be cool, not in the slightest. As much as I might try to dress cool or try to appear cool, you know, I think yeah, I just don't have the disposition to be cool. You know, I think I'm more of a, yeah. How do I put this? I want to say I'm a bit eccentric, but I don't think eccentric's the word, because in private I am quite, yeah, unhinged. Let's say in private I'm quite unhinged with my family, with my close friends. You know, if you see me just being a wild person, or even now actually, I feel like I'm completely unhinged. You know, and only unhinged in the sense that there's no leash on me, you know. But when I go out into the world, into public, I'm not changing who I am, but I am definitely holding a lot back, you know, in terms of my behavior, in terms of, you know, what just feel, what comes naturally to me in terms of behavior, because I've always felt the sense that you have to sort of behave a certain way in public, and I think that makes sense. There's a certain set of rules in society that when you are present in a social environment, that you need to, behave in a way that people are able to predict, that people are able to where your behavior isn't noticed, right? You know what I mean? And by noticing someone's behavior, they're normally acting in a way that's not expected, that's not normal, that's not quote unquote proper. But yeah, and I don't really see myself as a proper person, because what does that even mean to be a proper person? There's a lot of people that can definitely behave in a proper way, but are probably terrible people. I know a few of such people. You have to be careful when somebody keeps themselves so properly composed, and so you have to ask, like, nah, this guy's white knuckling it in life. There's a another spirit that's active there behind that person's eyes. You get such people, you could see them a lot when they get too comfortable around people. The opinions start flying around. Oh, this is like, and it's never a good opinion. That's also another hallmark of these wonderful gems of society, is they normally throw around unsavory, unfriendly opinions about people. They can throw unfriendly opinions about people that they are friendly with, and that's, if we want to talk about a cool person, that is now the coolest, and I mean that sarcastically, of course. Who wants to be a cool guy anyways? And funny enough, those people are, by the sarcastic definition of cool, definitely cool by accident. They're not exactly intentionally cool. And what's also cool is I think this episode is going to be called the cool episode or something stupid, something where people read the title of the episode, they're like, what? But titles don't matter either. That's another hallmark of cool people, actually, is that they have a title. It's always like, it's Mr. So and so, or it's it's Dr. So and so, That's just how people be sometimes, man. But the thing is also, you have to allow grace to people, We are all living this life together. We've all been exposed to various different circumstances that shape us and mold us to the people who we are, who we become. And you have to allow that people will have their weaknesses, Marcus Aurelius has a quote from Meditations where he says, be strict with yourself but tolerant to others, And that's him talking to himself, which is so interesting, That's something that I think is really cool about Marcus Aurelius among the Stoics, Like, he was someone, his writings and what we know from him is, it's all writings that were addressed to him personally. It was never written with the intention for someone else to read. It was always for him to read, So what a nice example of being introspective, And I know I'm not following that example in the slightest, because what I'm doing now is I'm just processing my thoughts and sharing them with you. And I will probably not watch this back. I can't do it. It feels so weird. It feels so weird to watch yourself, I won't say it's torture. It's a little bit of torture, actually, to watch yourself do something. Oh my word, sorry. I've been tired all day. The heat, dude. The heat is incredible today. I think it must have been something like 37 degrees. And I know, if you live like in the Northern Cape, like, like where the Karoo is, like, Uppington. I don't even know if that's the Karoo. I'll be honest, I don't actually know where the Karoo is. And And you know what? I think most people don't know either. I don't know where the Kuru is. I don't know where the Kalahari is. And I don't know if they are the same thing or not. So yeah, you have that. You have that also, you know. And I think that just comes from me not paying attention in school. I definitely did not pay attention in school. It's like, yeah, I don't know. I think school just wasn't built for me to pay attention in, you know. It's like while everybody's reading, oh, you know, mommy and daddy and baby go to the mall, and then I'm like, oh, what happens at the mall? Oh, there's a McDonald's at the mall. I probably should, you know, get a nice hamburger or a cheeseburger. And I know I'll be getting a toy, obviously. I wonder what toys they have at McDonald's nowadays. It's been a while since I was there, you know. And it's like, oh, I wonder if I ask my parents today, will they take me? Will they take me on Friday if I ask them every day between now and then? If I ask them for 2 weeks straight, will they eventually crack and say, okay, fine, let's go to McDonald's? And while all that's happening, the whole class is reading the book. And so that's just the story of my life when it comes to school, you know. Like, most of what I remember from school was the times in between classes. So, like, before school, and then first break, second break, and after school. Those were my high school memories, man. There was not much memories in class. That was just me completely zoning out. But anyways, it's super hot, man. That's why I've got the fan on. And these lights, come I tell you, these lights are not making it better. But one day, and if you're joining us now, if you are joining now, or rather if you've been here from the start, it's going to be so cool one day when we're in a proper studio and we have producers. And I say we, but I mean me. But you know, I want to manifest. When I say we, I mean the whole team of producers and sound engineers and camera people and lighting people, probably the same people, you know. That'll be cool. And that's the goal, you know. So yeah, keep watching, keep supporting the show, and I appreciate it, you know. So yeah, it's hot. We're wearing sunglasses indoors. I feel so weird about sunglasses indoors, you know. I don't know how people do it. You know, you go to the mall sometimes and also like cool people, if you know what I mean. They'll be in the mall, you know. They'll be in the mall, and I mean, it might even be cloudy outside, or partly cloudy, or mostly cloudy, or whatever they call it, partly sunny, or whatever. But we indoors, man. You know, I don't know. For me, I think maybe because I have a more utilitarian perspective of what sunglasses are for. Sunglasses are there so that, you know, you protect yourself a bit from the sun, even though nowadays you probably shouldn't, because you need that sunlight to come into your eyes. But I guess if you're gonna be outdoors for extended periods of time, then probably it's good to wear sunglasses. And you know what, I was watching this video by, is it Andrew Huberman, Dr. Andrew Huberman? He's a neuro surgeon, scientist. He's a neuroscientist, I think. What does he do? You know, I would Google it, but you are literally my phone. I'm talking to my phone, you know. And that should tell you everything you need to know about me, is that I'm someone who is up at night talking to his phone. Anyways, where was I going with this? Oh, so Dr. Huberman, or Professor Huberman, actually, I'm not even sure if that's the thingy. And I'm sure you're realizing by now, if you're new to the show, that I have a talent for going off on a tangent or for getting distracted. I do have a talent for distraction. Maybe that can be the title of the episode, Talent for Distraction. Or maybe that can be, if I were to ever rename the show, I would never rename the show. But anyways, yeah, maybe that can be like a subtitle, Talent for Distraction. Anyways, Dr. Huberman, or Professor Huberman, or whatever his title is, you know, people are most title orientated, and such people put me off, to be honest. If someone says, please call me by my first name, then I'm like, okay, I like you, you know, because I'm also like a first name kind of guy. You don't have to call me a Mr. this and Mr. that. First name is fine. Anyways, so he says that when you wake up in the morning, you should get some sunlight in your eyes. And he says, don't look directly at the sun and damage your eyes, but literally look outside in the direction of the sun and get some, sunlight in your eyes. And that does a whole lot of processes, a lot of big scientific terms like melatonin, and I don't know what else. Just melatonin is the one I remember, but there's probably other processes, hormones, chemicals going on in your body, in your brain, that actually at the end of the day is what helps you to sleep, And he says what really blocks that whole process is how much time we spend on our devices, So that's why everyone has sleeping problems nowadays, because we just spend too much time doing that, and not enough time, reading books. And I've endeavored this year to read 10 pages a day, minimum 10 pages a day, because I realized if I calculate it properly, if I read 10 pages a day, I might be able to read 14 books this year, And I've always planned to do like a book a month, but it's not realistic because some books are like 700 pages and other books are like 180 pages, So it's not even. You can't squeeze 700 pages in a month practically if you still have other things to do, And man, but wouldn't it be cool to have such time on your hands? Oh my goodness. Like to be able to fill your time with reading and maybe the reading and playing the piano and probably looking at my Hot Wheels collection. But no, man, I need human interaction. I cannot just be by myself all the time. That's crazy. But anyways, where was I going originally with this? Wow. Yeah, once again, if you're new to the show, this kind of happens often. So get used to it. Get used to the wild ride that is conversation with me. And it's just me conversating with myself. And eventually we will have guests on the show as well. I can't wait for that day. That's going to be fun. That's going to be another major step forward in the evolution of this show, Studio, or maybe I wonder, should it be guest first and then studio? Nah, I have a plan B for guests. It doesn't have to be in a studio, but I have plans. Anyways, so we move from guests then into a nice studio, and then that studio over time itself can also evolve, because things are constantly changing, and change is life. So yeah. But where was I? Sunglasses. I'm wearing them right now, obviously. This is not a pair that I would necessarily wear in public, if I'm honest. I don't know, the round ones just feel so weird. You feel like a bug. Bzz, 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 I'm a fly. And I'm not trying to be a fly. But if you know what, if you think I'm a fly, man, that's on you. If you think I'm a fly and not a human, then fine. I accept that you will accept your reality. But I cannot accept your reality because it's not real. And maybe I do look like a fly. And so what if I do? Flies are pretty cool. They're not actually. I'm trying to think, is there anything good about a fly? Nah, they're just annoying. I guess the one good thing about a fly is maybe if somebody's having if someone is just a very irritated person, or very, what's the word? Nah, we're not doing big words. Leave the big words. I'm tired of big words. It's so pretentious, and even that is a big word. What can we call what instead of a big word for pretentious? What can we do? We can give it another word. Pretentious is maybe too big a word, As much as I respect an expanding vocabulary, I still think that the most basic form of communication that is will be the most effective form of communication. Except if you're like trying to just communicate in emojis, like we're not doing that. We're not communicating in emojis. Anyways, I've got water here. I hope you don't mind. If you do mind also, you can go. You don't have to watch this. Nobody's forcing you to watch this. Even if you're a family member of mine, you're not being forced to watch it. I don't even think my family watches this show. I could say crazy stuff about them that's not even true, and they wouldn't even know. Provided I don't clip that section, whatever I'm saying. and put it on Instagram. But anyways, what was I? Oh. So people wear shades indoors, man. And to be honest, for me, it's unsettling. As much as I don't care what people think or what they do, I don't really care too much about what's not in my control. But it is unsettling because it's like, why you do? It just feels weird. And I mean, okay, so shades in the mall. That's weird. Okay, I consider you a weirdo. I consider you maybe on the arrogant side, just a douchebag or, just a real, yeah, unlikable person. And then take it the next step, dude. As the next step, and I saw this yesterday. I was at a funeral yesterday. Bro, shades in church. Yo, why are you wearing shades in church? You know what I mean? Why are you wearing shades in church? I don't get it. But yeah, nonetheless. I mean, people are also free to do what they want, Dude, dress like a clown. Dress like a clown in church. That's also fine. Who am I to dictate what people should and should not do? I have no right to that. What else, man? So, yeah. So here we are. We're talking about lights and shades. I guess I could catch you up a bit more about what's happened this year. I think where I left off with what happened this past year was I told you that I started studying music, which is awesome, and that is the first place, like going to go study music, being there, being at the music school, and just walking around there and going to classes and attending lectures and receiving instruction on mastering an instrument. All of that just feels so right, and you don't realize that there's so many other places you just don't need to be, and I'm talking about me personally. Maybe music school isn't the right place for you, and that's okay, but there's definitely a place out there where you feel it's right to be there. And for me, it's that place, man. Being among musicians and being among musical scholars and being around, the academic environment. As much as I'm not too much of a fan of academics, to be honest, like it's a real... let's just put it this way. It takes more effort for me to do academic stuff than it does to practice the piano. Like I have to work a lot harder to make a success of that than to make a success of playing the piano. Although I definitely could put a lot more effort into playing the piano, but I'm working on that. I'm really trying to step up my game, because what happened last year was that my schedule was so chock full of things, and I realized this just today. Actually, I was thinking about this. I was definitely managing my time well. I did like a bit of an audit of this past year, and I was like thinking to myself, okay, I kind of did okay with time management. My schedule, the way that my schedule was designed, the way that it was structured, and the way that it was executed, there was nothing wrong with that. The problem actually was that I took on too much. I just took on way too much. I said yes to things, and not, I didn't say yes for the sake of saying yes to people to satisfy them or to make them happy. I don't think that's the case. Maybe it is a bit like that, because I think I want people to like me, but we're not gonna psychoanalyze that. Maybe one day we'll have a therapist here. She or he can, break it down for me and get us to really look into this, insane circus that I call my brain or my mind. But anyway, so yeah, I realized actually, and there I just interrupted a very deep thought with something incredibly stupid, and you should probably get used to that if you're new to the show. And if you're not new to the show, welcome back. We are back. Anyways, so I was saying, and I lost my train of thought now. It's lost now. Wow. What was I saying? I was talking about... Oh. So the thought dawned on me, actually, that the way that we do things with scheduling, you can have a perfectly designed schedule, but if you put too many things in that schedule, you're gonna feel burnt out all the time, And I realized that, nah, man, this year I need to do it better. I need to say no to things. I need to stop taking on anything extra. I need to write down a list of non-negotiables, things that I must do and must prioritize. That's important, There's a lot going on in life, and you cannot engage in everything. You cannot engage in every conversation. You cannot engage in every project or every endeavor or everything. You just can't do it, man, as much as you want to, And that's, I guess, maybe the big lesson for me this past year is, there are things that you need to say yes to, Xavier, and there are things you need to say no to. And I'm going to say no a lot more, So I have those two words for me this year. This year of 2026. It's still January, This month has already felt incredibly long. But anyways, it's almost over, actually. I think next week Sunday is February already. But anyways, so what was I saying now again? Oh my goodness. I don't know if you know anybody else that manages to cut themselves off and then lose their train of thought and then struggle to come back to it, And that's me. I want to say unfortunately, but I don't care whether that's fortunate or unfortunate. But yeah. So basically, yeah. I think what's important for me this year is that consistency. That's the one word that I have for the year. The other word is no. Being consistent and saying no. And those two ideas, those two principles that I'm adopting, I'm adding on to things like I don't care what people think, or not being too concerned, or not being concerned at all with things that are not in your control, And those are the things that I think worked for me last year. What didn't work was that I was not consistent in most things, in everything, I feel like. And also, the other thing was that I just said yes too much to things, and so I have to respect my own. What's the word? I have to respect my own time, my own endeavors, things that I'm trying to achieve. But instead, I was sacrificing what I wanted to do for unnecessary, actually unnecessary extra things. There are those necessary things that you need to sacrifice for, like family, like your loved ones, or like your job, or your ambitious pursuits. You need to sacrifice for those things. But the problem comes in when you're sacrificing those things for things that have no value, have no purpose, that don't matter. They don't matter. So yeah, that's what I learned about this year. But anyway, so started studying music, and I focused on doing the piano, which is my primary instrument, and it's so awesome that that's the case, because I just love the piano, man. Like, I've piano music, pianists, like watching them on like my especially my Instagram feed is just full of pianists, watching them play, doing concertos and playing Chopin and Bach and Beethoven, and it's, oh my word, like, it's just to be part of that world, where you get to talk to people about Bach or about Beethoven or about, Chopin or about Shostakovich and all those things. It's like, you really feel like you're there, you're in it, you're in this world, you're in the world that you belong in. That's how I feel, and it's just the greatest joy, and I'm very excited to, in February, get back to it. Oh my word, I cannot wait. But what's also cool is that I began doing organ studies as well. So I'm doing piano studies and I'm doing organ studies. And organ is technically my second instrument, like my secondary instrument. But I know for a fact that my organ lecturer is kind of treating it like a first instrument as well. like a primary instrument. And I think it's just because yeah, man, I play the organ. It's part of my job is to play the organ. So it wouldn't be fair to take it easy on the organ and then do the piano full force, because I feel like I can afford to do full force piano and full force organ. And I'm happy with that, and I think it's been going kind of well, and hopefully I can do a bit better. Be strict with yourself and tolerant with others. So my endeavor last year was to achieve a 90% average for everything. And I achieved 90 for most things, and it's just so frustrating and annoying that just didn't happen for me. It just didn't happen, that I got a 90% average for everything. So I'm definitely gonna push more to make that happen this year. And I know I've heard people say, oh, it's impossible, you will never get 90. Like, watch me try. One thing about me is, like, put an impossible goal in front of me. Put an impossible goal in front of me, I'm gonna try my best to make it happen. Because I think even in the failure of attaining such a goal, you still achieve pretty high. Reach for the stars, so that if you fall, you land on a cloud. And that's a Kanye West line. I can't remember from which song was that, but yeah, people think Kanye West is out of his mind, and even if he is, his music is still pretty cool. Anyways, yeah, man. So I say anyways, but I wasn't on any particular point, so it's not even trying to get back to a tangent or trying to find myself. I think doing this is kind of like swimming in the ocean and hoping you find something, but every time you find something, it's just a piece of junk. I'm trying to stumble on some profound thought or some silly thought, but yeah, I don't know if it's happening. Oh my word. Like I said, I am tired, and I don't know if this happens to you, Name, but my energy gets totally sapped when it's hot. The hotter it is, the less energy I have, and it's just like, it's really, you could predict with much certainty that if it's hot, that I'm not going to be in the mood to do anything. But even if you're not in the mood, you should still do it. That's discipline. That's really discipline. And discipline is important. Hey, I don't wanna. I wonder now, how long have I been going at this? Okay, we're reaching the 30-minute mark. Okay, that's cool. We can still carry on. Okay, so I was catching you up on the year. Okay, maybe I should do a month by month thing. Okay, January started a new job, or rather I started the job that I started in 2023, but in a more official capacity. So that's quite fun. Really getting into the rhythm of things at work, getting to know, my colleagues, and trying to get into, what is expected of me, and trying to figure out what's the best way to crush this, knowing that my schedule will become compromised at times as a result of also doing full-time studies. And then February hits, and then I start with university, doing my first year. Very exciting stuff. February hits, that's what we're doing. March comes along, we're still going on strong, and that's when the autumn starts kicking in, where you have those weird, you have cold evenings and cold mornings, but hot afternoons and like hot days, and it really, like, that's always an awkward time of the year, because I can't stand being hot, man. Like, if I'm wearing a jacket and it's warm, I'm taking the jacket off, And then sometimes you can't, because maybe you're wearing like a long sleeve. You're wearing a short sleeve shirt with a long sleeve vest and a jacket over it, like a light jacket. And then it's like, okay, it's getting warm now, but I can't take this thing off because this thing is still on. So, yeah. Don't dress like that. That's also another lesson I learned. Very important lessons I'm sharing with you. So I hope you're taking notes. But if you're not taking notes, it's also fine. It's also fine. I don't believe I'm teaching anything, and nor do I want to. If you come to the show wanting to learn something, dude, YouTube is there's a lot more things on YouTube than that. You don't have to watch this, you know. I wonder how many times I've now chased people away from watching. But it doesn't matter, man. If you want to watch, thank you. Thank you for watching. If you don't want to watch, thank you for going. You know, I have no ego about it, you know. That's also something interesting I learned this past year, you know. Ego is the enemy. That's another stoic principle, let's call it, that if you remove the ego, then you will not if you remove the ego from things, you will not be in a position where if something goes wrong or doesn't go your way, that you will get upset. That won't happen, you know, because you had no ego in it. You know, you didn't place your self-worth or your self-esteem or you didn't place any of that upon the success of something, so that if it fails or if it is rejected, then it doesn't hurt. But if you place your own self-importance, your self-worth, your self-esteem, your ego in something, and it gets rejected, you take it personally. And I think that's like probably the safest thing to do, is just to not involve your ego in anything, you know, because all kinds of problems come from that, you know. There's a big sense of entitlement when it comes to putting your ego into things. There's a big sense of, why am I yawning so much? Oh my god. I think it's just because, you know, I'm trying to be an early riser, and so you wake up early and you're tired, but you know the day goes swimmingly, and you reach the evening and then you start really getting tired, you know. I think maybe I should do these shows a bit earlier. I'm just keeping track of the time. Okay, it's almost 9. Luckily I don't have to go do the dishes now. Last time I was like, okay, I finished that episode at like 10 at night, and it was my turn to do the dishes. Do you know how wrecked I was after that? I was like, oh my word, I'll have to make me a cup of coffee to do the dishes. And so I did that. But then the flop is, you have a cup of coffee, you do the dishes, and then when you're done with the dishes, you're still buzzing with all the caffeine in your system. And you're like, how am I going to sleep now? You know? Oh my word, these chemical assistants. It's not a big solution. Anyways. Okay. So, yeah, February happens, March happens. What happened in March? Any milestones, any important... Oh, I should say this. I think it was in February, I played like my first public performance, you know? And that was cool. That was so nerve-wracking, you know? I remember just, like, my piano lecturer asked me if I'd be willing to play at a prize giving, you know? And so, obviously, when I'm scared of something, I tend to go for it, you know, because I believe in conquering your fear. I believe in conquering the fears that you didn't know you had immediately, so that it just doesn't become a long-term problem or persistent problem. So, she asked me, can I do this? I said, yes. In my heart, I was like, I can't do this, you know, but I had to push myself to do it. And so I played a nice piece, and it was fun and all that. And then, like, come and walk you through the thing. So I arrived there. It's like a prize giving thing. So I arrived there, and I don't know. I know which instrument I'm playing on, because that day, earlier in that day, I played on that instrument on the stage, just as a form of practice or rehearsal, you know. And then I get there and I do that. And then, okay, so when I arrived there at that time, I thought, okay, I could get there earlier and just practice a bit on stage. But there was too many people setting up, so I was like, okay, I can't do this right now. All right. Then I was like, okay, I'm pacing, dude. I'm pacing for like an hour. I got there early, you know. I got there early without anything else to do. So, whew, the waiting is the worst. When you have a performance, the waiting is the worst. You know, I just wanna, warm up, and then once the warming up is done, I want to get on stage and I want to play. You know, but I do think this year what I want to do before performances, I maybe want to get myself through like some sort of ritual. But then again, I also I don't want the success of my performance to be dependent on a ritual, because what if that ritual is disturbed and then I get into my own head about, oh no, I didn't do the ritual properly or fully or completely, this performance is gonna fail. I don't wanna get into that either, But I do envy those performers who just look so cool and calm and collected when they get on stage, or even before they're on stage. They just chilled. They're chilling and relaxing and laughing. And then they go on stage and they crush. And then they get off stage and then it's back to normal like nothing ever happened. I admire that so much. I really, that's something that I want to adopt, I wonder if you can learn to do that. Because that is like magical to me. Oh my god, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Anyways, am I sorry? Or is it just polite to say sorry? Food for thought. And I wonder how many times we actually apologize for stuff that we're not actually sorry about, but we only apologize because it is expected of us to apologize. And then again, at the same time, how many things are we just doing because it's expected of us and not because we should do it or that we want to do it? But also at the same time, you don't want to be the person who only does what they want to do. Nobody likes those people. Those people are narcissistic a-holes, if you ask me. The type of people that wear sunglasses in the mall. I tried that once, actually. It was super uncomfortable. I took it off immediately because I was like, nah, man. I feel like people need to see my eyes. I don't know why. That's so weird. And I think that's actually what it is, I feel like a lot of human connection is related to eye contact. But what if everyone I've seen that, but they weren't blind, man. They are blind people and you know them because they normally like holding on to somebody, or they're walking like a support animal, or they have like a cane with them, like a walking stick. What is that thing called? A guiding stick? A blind stick. It's not a blind stick. I don't know what it is. But anyways, so yeah, that's how you know it's a blind person. Other than that, you can't be just walking around alone in the mall with shades on. You're not blind. You just, you're just trying to keep you quiet. So yeah, that's the whole thing. It's not the whole thing because I'm still going on here. What else, man? So let's say we get to March. Nothing. So February I had a cool performance, my first ever performance. I think it was like on the 12th of February or something. I don't really remember the date. I'm not a sentimental person like that, I just know that it happened and it was cool. And I actually haven't thought much about it until now, actually. Wow. So that's interesting. Alright, and then March comes around. I don't think there's anything particularly special about March. I do know, and I think it was March, and then April comes. April, I actually did my first student concert. I think it was in April. I can't remember. I know I saved the pamphlet or the program or the poster. I just don't know where I put it. You see how unsentimental I am. I literally don't know where that thing is. But anyways, I think it was in April. I did my first performance. Because what happened was someone else was supposed to perform. They pulled out of the performance and there was basically a spot open. So I was like, let me take it, And ever since then, I've been doing that. Whenever there's a gap, I go and perform. So that's quite fun, I think I performed maybe 4 times. 4 times last year. I'd like to perform many more times. I'd like to perform at least, I want to say once a month. That's too much. Once a month is too much. Maybe every 2 months. Every 2 months, yeah. Then I could maybe perform 6 times, 7 times this year. I'm hoping to do that. This is my ambition. I've been learning French, by the way. French is a bit of a, French is a very interesting language, right? It is it's a romantic language, it's a like Latin based language. That's actually what romantic means, because the Romans, controlled the area where France is, and the area where Spain is, and the area, of course, where Italy is. Rome is situated in Italy. And all those languages are what they call the romantic languages: Portuguese, Spanish, Italian, French. Those are the romantic languages. And I know this because I've been listening to this podcast called The History of Rome. It's actually pretty cool, If you're into like history and stuff, man, go listen to The History of Rome. I've been listening to it on Spotify. So now when I drive to work, or if I take my sister, let's say after I drop my sister off at school, or if I'm doing the dishes, or if I'm cleaning my room, or if I'm ironing, oh my God, I'm so sorry. If I'm ironing my clothes, or if I'm just doing anything that doesn't require, focus or thought, then I'll be listening to that podcast. It's quite interesting, The History of Rome. Oh my goodness. The Romans were some wild people. Let's just put it that way. And the wildest of the people is always like the emperor, And it's always a miracle when the emperor turns out to be a good person who's not corrupted by the extreme levels of power and wealth at his disposal. That's what makes Marcus Aurelius so admirable. Although he also made mistakes. One of the mistakes he made is so interesting. For someone to be so good at what they do that they make such few mistakes that history can recall. He chose his successor as his son, completely blind to the fact, or maybe willfully blind to the fact, that his son is a complete maniac. His son is a complete what's the word? Yeah, his son is just a wild character, man. Just someone who wants to, engage in every, pleasure on this earth, and enjoy the wealth and power and fame and influence and all those things without actually doing the job that is associated with all those, quote unquote benefits. I wouldn't consider those benefits. I'd say pitfalls, But so Marcus Aurelius, as much as he was an insanely cool emperor, and he also had and that's what makes meditation such an interesting book. This is not my intention to turn this into a pitch to go and read meditations. I myself haven't read meditations. I just get Marcus Aurelius quotes from some of the books I read, or some of the principles you get from Epictetus's Teachings of a Stoic, or Ryan Holiday's The Daily Stoic. These are very interesting books that I use on a regular basis, just to reinforce the whole Stoic philosophy. And that's also the thing about performing, right? Is that all you can really do is prepare yourself. That's what's in your control. The outcome of the performance is somewhat in your control if you're focused and prepared, and and you find some stillness in your mind and some focus. But the reaction of the audience, the reaction of the audience is completely not in your control, and that's okay. You shouldn't worry about that then. If it's not in your control, you have the benefit of not worrying about it, because it's not in your control, And I think I've just helped myself a little bit, to be honest, because, you're always so nervous for a performance because you want to do well. But if you've prepared well, you're going to be fine. What disturbs your performance, and I think this is what happened with me, because not every performance I had was a perfect performance. There was one performance that I remember. This is maybe the second time where I performed in a student concert, the second student concert that I performed in. I played a Beethoven piece, a bagatelle, and I've endeavored to perform everything from memory, and it's kind of going well. I feel like it's you push yourself to really know the piece, but I guess I didn't know this piece well enough, man. And I thought I did. I really thought I did. Because when I get to the last page, it just fell apart. But what was so cool is, like, part of what my piano teacher has been teaching me is, if you just keep it cool, if things go wrong and you keep it cool, people will not notice that it went wrong. And so hopefully, I think I kept it cool, and I sort of just ended the piece on a I just ended the piece, like, not abruptly, but in a inconspicuous way, and the audience claps and people say well done afterwards. I think just because they're supposed to say well done to encourage you. But I know for myself, I was like, that is unacceptable. You forgot like 80% of the last page. It just wasn't in my head. But that just goes to show you, like, the only thing you can control is your preparation and your performance. And actually, sometimes you can't really control your performance either, because sometimes your mind can you could just lose it, But I'm gonna blame that on just I won't say lack of preparation, but a lack of proper preparation, I think. But ever since then, never had a memory lapse. Unless it wasn't an exam. But those high pressure situations are so tough. It's easier. It's easier to perform on a stage in an auditorium full of people than it is to perform in a studio for 3 examiners. Like, it's much easier to play for the crowd than to play for 3 experts. They're not listening for your mistakes. Obviously, they know you're a student. There will be mistakes. They know that, and I know that they know. But it still feels like the stakes are higher somehow. And I think, it maybe takes, to get marks and stuff, I think it takes a bit of the joy out of learning music, man. As much as I love to play the piano, I don't love to play the piano for marks. It feels cheap. Even though, it's part of my ambition to get as high marks as possible. Yeah, I just don't like the idea of something so personal and so subjective. I almost said objective. It's not objective. Something so subjective gets an objective result, if that's even possible. But then again, you also can't control that. You cannot control what the examiners, what their experience might be. They might be having a bad day, or they might, and not to question anyone's integrity, of course, but they might be having a bad day, and they might not be listening as attentively, or perhaps they're a bit more sensitive that particular day to certain mistakes or whatever, I'm just thinking out loud, just playing devil's advocate here. I'm not actually criticizing anybody, because I've gotten good marks for all my performances, so all my exams so far, so I'm happy about that, and I hope to continue that trajectory and really try and get 90% for an exam, a practical exam. I don't think that's ever happened. If it has, I actually want to ask, has anyone, there at where I study, has anyone achieved 90% for a performance? I hope they say yes, because then I'm like, okay, so it's possible. But even if it's not possible, I'm gonna go for that goal. I keep wanting to check the time, actually. Where are we now? We're about approaching the 55-minute mark. I think I can kind of end it there. Let me see. Are there any closing remarks? Do you have any closing remarks, sir? Do you know what happened? So, I was quite... I don't know if this is even something to be sad about, but it's just like, yes, I don't like a lot of stuff on Netflix. Like, I have a very particular taste in entertainment, And the thing is also, I don't watch much Netflix in the first place. I watch it maybe when I'm eating breakfast, and maybe when I'm actually, I think that might be the only time that might be the only time I'm watching Netflix is when I'm eating breakfast. And so, okay, so I eat breakfast and then I and then I watch Netflix. Okay. But the one show that I always loved watching was Star Trek. Particularly Star Trek The Next Generation. One of my favorite shows. I absolutely love that show for many reasons. One of the reasons is that it is so deep, man. Like, they focus really on developing each of the characters, and you really follow a journey on this spaceship, the Enterprise, and the relationships that people have with each other, and the sort of leadership involved. That's also one of my absolute favorite things, is like Captain Jean-Luc Picard, who is he's the captain of the ship. Everyone follows his orders and stuff, but he's such a, he's not a genius by any stretch, but his ability as a leader just blows my mind. And I take notes, mentally, of course, but I take notes in his style of leadership, because that's the kind of leader I want to be. I want to be the kind of leader who definitely is able to make decisions in high pressure situations, but knows that he has a team who can handle it, who knows, okay, guys, here's the situation. What are your recommendations? And he can hear his whole team out, and then sometimes take one of their recommendations if it's a good one, or he can just make a call and say, okay, now let's do this, and they just do it, and it's brilliant. It's brilliant. I don't know. They just developed that character really well. So yeah, unfortunately, that's no longer on Netflix. So I'm a bit sad about that, and I hope they bring it back. I don't know what the deal is actually. I think there's some kind of beef between Paramount, which is the owners and producers of Star Trek, and Netflix. There's some kind of dispute there. So I don't know what that's all about. Not that I care too much about these things, anyways. It's like caring about what's going on in the news. There's always something bad going on in the news. And if you're gonna obsess over it, it's like you're gonna obsess over a new thing every day, because every day bad things are happening. And you know what? Every day, good things are also happening. Maybe you can focus on that, or maybe you can just focus on living your life and moving forward with that, instead of worrying about what else is going on in the world. Minding your own business, I guess. But anyways, I think I'm gonna cut it there. We're running a bit into overtime now. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. And yeah. Bye!